Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The Canadian Feminist Alliance for International Action released a report Monday morning, and it finds the RCMP continues to be tainted by widespread misogyny, racism, and violence against women. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Accusations of racism, sexism, and violence against women, both within and outside the RCMP, are not new. But a new report brings these allegations into focus and calls on the government to take action. Pam Pometer, one of the FAFIA report's co-authors, says it builds upon what is already known.
Well, by bringing it all together, we can show this ongoing pattern of refusing to make changes. And because of their refusal to make changes, women inside and outside the RCMP continue to be physically assaulted, raped, and suffer the ongoing mental health issues, post-traumatic stress, and some of them commit suicide.
Shivangi Misra also co-authored the report. She says it is clear the force is not only failing to protect women within the RCMP from violence, but also women and the public at large. Misra says 2020's mass shooting in Nova Scotia is just one example of this.
There were complaints made by the shooter's partner about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and they refused to act on time, which has led to femicide and other violence against, a very systemic, broad violence against women.
The report calls on the government to create an independent oversight body and perform an external review of the Mounties. The force does have a civilian review and complaints commission, but Misra says this is not working.
But it's also because the current oversight and accountability mechanism is not truly independent. It is intertwined with the RCMP itself. So if there are women who complain against the misconduct of RCMP officers, it is the RCMP that investigates itself. And then these recommendations and these implementations, it's the RCMP commissioner that has the final ultimate say on these recommendations.
Pometer says the review should explore serious structural changes to the RCMP, which could include dismantling the force if necessary.
We're calling for an independent review, but it's for a very specific purpose, for the purpose of legislative changes, for the purpose of potentially, if the review looks like these can't be fixed, dismantling the RCMP, for the purpose of providing supports for women. I mean, all of these things are incredibly important.
The RCMP's headquarters in Ottawa did not respond to APTN's request for comment. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
In the Atlantic region, a second Mi'kmaq First Nation launched their own self-regulated treaty lobster fishery after talks with the Department of Fisheries broke down. Chief Doreen Bernard of the Lennox Island First Nation says her community could not wait any longer. APTN's Angel Moore was at the launch and brings us this story.
That's how you protect treaty rights. You get out there and you do it and you practice it. That's the only way to do it.
That's Chief Darlene Bernard as her community gets ready to defy federal regulations and launch the Lennox Island Treaty Protected Fishery from the community's wharf, located off the coast of northwestern Prince Edward Island. Fishers are going out to harvest lobster and earn a moderate livelihood under the community's management plan. Bernard says the federal government has not respected Mi'kmaq treaty rights.
They have a responsibility to create space within the fishery for the treaty fishery, for First Nations to become involved in the commercial fishery, and they failed to do that.
Following the launch, there was a ceremony at the wharf. Elder Mathilda Knockwood Snake could barely contain her pride.
When I seen the boat go out, and I felt like screaming. I just felt like cheering and just be happy, that they're able to do that and that they're proud to do it.
Lennox Island is the second community to launch their own self-regulated treaty-protected fishery. Sabaganagati First Nation treaty fishery launched in 2020 in southwestern Nova Scotia and was met with violence from non-Indigenous fishers who said the fishery was illegal. But it was a different scene at Lennox Island Wharf. A few RCMP vehicles stopped by, but otherwise it was a regular day as Mi'kmaq commercial fishers also prepared to haul crab. Blake Bernard, who monitors the treaty fishery, said the DFO was nearby in the water.
There was a federal fishery officer sitting out there with some scopes. just watching. Other than that, went off without a hitch.
The fishers will sell their catch to the band, who has their own license to buy the lobster and sell it to other buyers. APTN News asked the Department of Fisheries and Oceans about Lennox Island's fishery. In an emailed statement, the DFO said, "Fisheries and Oceans Canada is focused on solutions that protect Indigenous rights, all those who work in Canada's fishing industry, to ensure everyone has an opportunity to benefit from fishing." The Lennox Island Treaty Fishery Management Plan includes a total of 1,000 traps for the commercial season, with 100 traps per person. A Lennox Island fisher told APTN News the treaty traps had yet to be seized by fisheries officers, as went to air. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Lennox Island First Nation.
Indigenous leaders in Saskatchewan are calling on the Pope to visit the province this summer. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations held a news conference at the last standing residential school in Saskatchewan. They are pressing the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops to arrange a stop for the Pope so Saskatchewan survivors can hear his apology in person. The Muskowhegan Indian Residential School is on Treaty 4 territory, where the treaty promise for education was made. Some Indigenous leaders are questioning the plans to visit places where religious pilgrimages occur, seeing that as a reward for Indigenous people who still practice Catholicism rather than a sign of reconciliation. Susan Bowden with the Regina Archdiocese's Truth and Reconciliation Committee says the Catholic Church must walk the healing journey with residential school survivors.
I felt very conflicted many times about being part of the Archdiocese as a residential school survivor. Questioned my role many, many times, and even today. But I've come to the understanding that it's just as much, much bigger than me and what I think people are going to think about me. We have to hear from the Pope that he's sorry.
Archbishop Don Bolin, who also attended, says he just returned from Rome. He says the Pope is in poor health and may not be able to visit many sites when he comes to Canada. The Archdiocese says they will get as many survivors as possible to wherever the Pope ends up visiting. Plans are moving forward for an Indigenous-led community centre in downtown Vancouver. According to the British Columbia government, the project will include affordable housing, education, and a centre for Indigenous youth. The province announced the Centre for Indigenous Youth at a press conference on Friday. It will be the new location for the nonprofit Urban Native Youth Association and the Indigenous Post-Secondary Nicola Valley Institute's Vancouver campus. BC will provide an additional $2.5 million for finalizing the project. MLA Melanie Mark expressed joy when sharing how the project got started.
Advanced Education Minister, I invited both parties to come together. Native Youth Centre was growing out of its space. NVIT was growing out of its space. We brought them in a room. We dreamed big. We got a concept plan. You got the news release. Today, government is announcing the approval of the concept plan to build that business case, which is going to be the blueprint for our future.
We need to take a short break, but still to come, the search for a missing woman in Vancouver has come to a tragic end. Welcome back to APTN National News. A meeting of Indigenous financial minds and institutions for the purpose of increasing economic prosperity took place last week. Among the attendees at the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations Association's Indigenous Prosperity Forum was the Bank of Canada. For more, Larry Schembri, Deputy Governor of Canada's Central Bank, joined our Dennis Ward.
Mr. Schembri, thanks for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Last fall, the head of the Bank of Canada joined us here on APTN News to say that Canada's central bank would make its decisions with reconciliation in mind. Many people don't know what the Bank of Canada even does, so can you tell us what would the central bank's reconciliation mean to your average Indigenous person?
Well, reconciliation is part of the call to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The call to action number 292 speaks to economic reconciliation, and that's really what we're working towards, is developing a reconciliation action plan over the next 2 years. And what it means for us is for us to sort of try to address some of the barriers that we see to economic inclusion amongst Indigenous communities. This includes lack of access to credit and capital, lack of capacity, whether it's capacity in terms of education or infrastructure, in which infrastructure could include housing, things like that, schools, and so forth. And then the other barriers we see are related to data. So I think we can work with Indigenous organizations and help advance the case for economic reconciliation and try to address some of the barriers to economic inclusion that exist at the moment.
The Bank of Canada sets interest rates, which have been on the rise. We've been warned for quite some time there might be an impending inflation or a recession. Inflation is costing us more money for food, gas, and everything else. This is a hardship for people living in poverty. Can the Bank of Canada help fix that?
Well, the Bank of Canada is committed to our inflation target of 2%. So monetary policy over the next 2 to 3 years is going to be geared towards getting inflation back to our 2% target. So that's important for us. I mean, most of the inflation we're seeing now is really globally generated. So we see that higher commodity prices are flowing into higher gasoline prices. And obviously the Ukraine war has caused prices of various grains to rise, and that's showing up in the higher prices for agricultural products that people are buying in the supermarket. So a lot of the inflation we're seeing now is really globally driven, but there is a component that's domestically sourced, that the Canadian economy is moving into a situation of excess demand. There is demand pressure in the Canadian economy, and that's what monetary policy is geared at addressing.
Mr. Schembri, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us here today.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for taking the time with me today.
The search for a missing woman in Vancouver has come to a tragic end. As APTN's Tina House reports, there are still many questions about what happened to her and how the police handled the investigation. And we must warn you that some viewers might find the following story disturbing.
On this normally quiet street in one of Vancouver's most prominent neighborhoods, a contractor renovating this vacant mansion found the skeletal remains of Chelsea Poorman. The 24-year-old has been missing since September the 8th, 2020, after getting separated from her sister Paige after a night on Granville Street, just a 10-minute drive from here.
She went through so much trauma. She overcame so much. But to end up like this is not right.
Since her disappearance, her family, friends, and members of the community launched an intense search for the young woman who had only been in Vancouver for 3 weeks after just moving here from Saskatchewan to start a better life. Her family said she didn't know anyone in the city, and it wasn't like her to not be in touch. Her family says they reported it to the Vancouver police, but say the police did not immediately start the search, didn't interview her sister Paige right away, or request for surveillance videos from the area.
How many more Chelseas? Every single person has a responsibility to do everything they can to stop this, and they're not.
Over 100 people gathered outside the house where she was found to pay their respects to the family and to demand justice for Chelsea after Vancouver police called her death not suspicious. Chelsea's mom Sheila says she is enraged they deemed it not suspicious after getting details from the coroner.
I was told from the coroner, and I had to ask him twice if what he said was true. He said that Chelsea wasn't fully intact. She was missing her cranium, and she was missing some fingers. And they have the gall to say that it's not suspicious and no foul play.
We do not believe that Chelsea was murdered. We don't believe that her death was caused by another person. The exact cause of death may never be known, and at this point it's considered to be undetermined.
Her family and advocates are demanding that the police do a more thorough job and find out what happened to her and who is responsible.
VPD, you need to respect the Poorman family. When you said her case is not suspicious, is hurtful and harmful to our people. VPD needs to apologize to our relatives, the Poorman family.
Adding to the mystery is that Chelsea was discovered on one of these two balconies here in the back of the house. Now, there is no way to access the balconies from the outside, and her family confirms that Chelsea had a disability in her arm, making it nearly impossible for her to scale the side of the building to get onto the balcony. Police have also revealed that not only was she not intact when she was discovered, but there was a blanket placed on top of her. The owner is overseas, and this house has sat empty for the last couple of years. That is until just a couple weeks ago, when contractors made the grisly discovery.
VPD barely even looked. It was our people, our way as Indigenous people, our strength as Indigenous people. You know who is suspicious? VPD.
According to her sister Paige, after they got separated that night, she called her sister, and Chelsea said that she had met a new bae and that she was okay. That was the last time anyone heard from her, and then her phone was turned off. They believe that Poorman died near the time of her disappearance, and toxicology tests were not possible. And on this Mother's Day, instead of celebrating this day, her mother, Sheila Poorman, and her family are in deep mourning over the loss of Chelsea and asking what really happened to her. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
All right, we need to step aside for one final break, but still ahead, for the first time, an animated series is being recorded in an Indigenous language in Atlantic Canada. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Natalie Spence sent us this photo from Nelson House, Manitoba. She spotted these two moose crossing the road. A nice reminder to always take caution when traveling those northern roads, as these big animals are out there. You can send your photos by email to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be selected as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. 14 in sun in Charlottetown and 18 in sun in Fredericton. 17 in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 16 in Cartwright. 22 degrees in Saguenay and 20 in Quebec City. 23 in a mix of sun and cloud in North Bay and 21 in sun in Peterborough. 26 and rain in Timmins and rain in 17 in Sioux Lookout. Rain in 12 in Churchill and 12 in Puckawagan. Rain in 19 in Winnipeg and 16 in rain in Dauphin. More rain and 15 in Regina, 15 in North Battleford. 13 in Meadow Lake and 1 degree in Uranium City. Over in the west, some snow and 5 degrees in Fort McMurray and 13 in Grand Prairie. 9 degrees in Red Deer and 11 in Calgary. Rain and 12 in Vancouver and 14 in Bella Coola. 8 degrees in Dease Lake and 13 in Prince George. 10 and a mix of sun and cloud in Watson Lake and 4 in Old Crow. 12 degrees in Fort Liard and 9 in Fort Simpson. 1 degree in Fort McPherson and -1 in Colville Lake. 1 degree in Whale Cove and -2 and some snow in Baker Lake. -5 in Resolute and -1 in Iqaluit. Little Bird is a new series premiering on Crave and APTN in the near future. The series centers on a 60-scoop survivor who was adopted into a Jewish family. She embarks on a journey to reconnect with her birth family and heritage. You can watch A Little Bird on APTN Lumi and Crave when it is released sometime in 2023. You can sign up at aptnlumi.ca. For the first time, an animated series is being recorded in an Indigenous language in Atlantic Canada known as Wolastoqey, and it's airing on APTN. Stats Canada says there are only 350 speakers, with less than 100 still using it as a first language. Angel Moore reports on a cartoon starring the Wabanaki people's most famous hero.
Oh, need up, Guabit, kiskit that Bowley?
Memaskin, Kispawlo need up, Yanap Nilyut, Dapu A.
Oh, need up, leader Hazipan Jalpinupsk.
What? That is Little Goose Cap, speaking Wolastoqey. He's the main character of the cartoon series called Little Goose Cap and the Legends of Turtle Island. And he's played by multimedia artist Natalie Sapier of the Tobic First Nation. And it's the first time an animated series has been voiced in Wolastoqey.
Every part of your spirit is awake, and then you start seeing your language everywhere. So I'm really excited to see this show be airing because I miss it.
The series follows the adventures of Goose Cap as a boy. According to legend, he's said to have created landscapes and animals. Tara Audibert conceived the series and wrote, produced, and directed all of the episodes. Her aim is to preserve her language by teaching the youth.
I grew up on Sesame Street, and I probably know more Spanish than I do Wolastoqey. So just from watching that. So I think it's important that, this the culture is within our entertainment stream, and especially for kids.
Grandmother Mimi Mewen is voiced by Imelda Purley. She's fluent in Wolastoqey and ensured the script was in the traditional language.
So what this is doing in the language, it's showcasing identity to be safe, identity to be shared, identity to be proud of, identity to be, celebrating.
Sapier says Little Goose Cap was a challenge.
But you put them into a character. You're putting an action to it. And where I'm very new with telling stories this way, I was like, wow. So I cleared my schedule for like 3 months to focus on Little Goose Cap. And it was such an amazing experience.
The 13 episodes of Little Goose Cap and the Legends of Turtle Island begins airing on APTN in English, French, and Wolastoqey. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabukduk, known as Halifax.
That's all we have for you tonight. For more Indigenous news, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.